We have another omnibus to take out of its Amazonian packaging. I was supposed to write Son of Nimrod, but it looks like I've written Son of Nimru. You'll all be calling us Nimru from now on, won't you? Hey, Nimru, what do you think of Iron Man by Maths Fractions? I didn't read it because I don't like the artist. I didn't know what is inside, but I reckon it is a Hulk one. Always feels great to fail at opening these and have that forever documented in video form. I was an idiot, I should have went for there. This is a Moon Man omnibus, 90s Moon Man, written by Chuck Dickens. And I think there's some issues by Jim DeMatteis in here. It collects Moon Man 1 to 34, as well as a Spider-Man story that resolves a plot point, and a few other bits and pieces like annuals and one-shots. Good thing about this omnibus is that it ends just before Brett Kavanaugh takes over writing the title. Very good collection for that. You get the best of that series in this volume, and I doubt there will ever be a volume 2 because who the heck wants that rubbish? But yeah, good collection here. Let's see what's underneath. Is that an effect? Or is it just the state of this? It appears to be an effect for some reason. I don't know why you would want something to look like it's covered in dust, but that is the direction they have went for. I miss the old days, because that moon crescent would have been silver and embossed, and it would have been great. This is 90s stuff, very early 90s stuff. I am not an enormous Moon Man fan. I really only like the 2006 run, but I'm sure this will be enjoyable, if not good. Chuck Dickens is writing, and he is best known for his work on Batman and Punisher, so here makes sense for we have a character that is stuck between being Batman and Punisher. Although, have they removed the credits just so that they don't have to credit Chuck Dickens every time? When it is omnibuses where I have not read the contents, they are awkward videos. But I have read this first story. I read it a long time ago. Maybe just this first issue. I don't remember. But there is at least 2 other issues of this run I have read. And I have read the Spider-Man story at the end. So I should have stuff to say. There's a woman. This first story, I remember one idea from it, but I remember when I read it, I liked reading it and thought I would happily read more, but we never had an omnibus collection of it or any collections of it back then. I think I downloaded the first issue, or maybe the first few issues, on a whim. I'm not sure how else I would have read it. Another page with a suspiciously blank box where presumably credits were writer Chuck Dickens, artist, whoever, and so on. The one thing I remember is this plot with Moon Man's nemesis, Bushman. He was bitten by a radioactive bush. He has taken control of a tiny African nation, a real one if I remember, one that actually exists, Burundi. And now he has got diplomatic immunity and shit like that. Bushman is a pretty weak bad guy, but I do applaud chuck Dickens for recognising that and trying to give him a new setup and new resources. I don't know what happened to Bushman ruling this country. It feels like something that Marvel would quickly undo the minute Chuck Dickens is off the book. They don't want an evil warlord ruling an actual country. Interesting story beat though. Definitely the most interesting thing done with Bushman when he is alive. Normally I don't particularly criticise the cheesecake, but it seems very egregious in this. We had that woman before pointlessly wearing a bikini, and now the only other woman in the book is also wearing a bikini. There is nothing wrong with women wearing bikinis. It just feels a bit sleazy when it is in comics created by men. So yeah, it looks like it ends with issue 3. I remember that. I think I read the first 3 issues. SeaWorld Attacks. Remember this one? It's pretty fucking awful. Baron Michael writes this, and, well, this sums up his talent as a writer. That man just ate a gerbil. Why does it set off all my emergency alarm bells? Sexy Madam Hydra whipping boys, though. I'm into that. I wish she would whip me. Ideally, without any sexual tone to it at all. I wish she would just whip me over and over again, because I hate myself and I want to earth. She can even wrap her legs around me neck if she wants. But that one I would prefer to be sexual. That man just ate a gerbil. Why does that set off all my emergency alarm bells? This is a stupid issue by a stupid man. And I think the only reason I gave it a positive review was because I was still convincing myself I like SeaWorld Attacks. That man just ate a gerbil, and that is unusual to see a man eating a gerbil. Why does a man eating a gerbil set off all my emergency alarm bells like it is something unusual to see? It's fucking terrible. Back to the regular issues with an actual writer. One problem I encounter with an omnibus like this is that I like to then spend the week covering comics related to what I've shown. And I really cannot think of any Moonman comics or any relevant comics that I can look at this week. Almost missed this factoid. This issue is drawn by Heathcliff. I only just talked about him in that Suicide Squad video with him doing artwork. When it comes to guest stars, you're coming out of the gate swinging here, and then dropped the ball as fast as you can with the next guest star. Am I going to... I have Brother Voodoo comics. I'm not proud of it. Am I going to have to sink that low with this week's videos, looking at Brother Voodoo? I really am looking forward to reading this though. Chuck Dickens wrote a lot of good DC stuff, and even his Punisher. I didn't like Punisher much, but his Punisher stuff I have enjoyed. On the topic of Punisher, I have read this story. This is the Acts of Vegans story. We have a 2-parter team up with Punisher against Flagman. Captain America enemy, Flagman. And now I have no excuse to not review his first appearance, which I don't know why I've put off for so fucking long. So that's at least one video I can do this week. I always thought this woman, the redhead, she only appears in this story. I would have kept her around. It's fun to have Flagman with an underling that we know and recognise. and who has her own character, or at least capacity to have her own character. So definitely anticipate her return in my imaginary run on Captain America. Fun two-part of this. At the same time, I am sure Ghost Rider did an Axe of Vegans tie-in where Ghost Rider teamed up with Punisher against Flagman. The idea theories were running wild that day in the Marvel office, weren't they? I'm not going to complain. Flagman is a character Marvel absolutely demolished by making him into a ridiculous jobber who gets beaten by children off panel and whose own ideals are made as outlandish and nonsensical as they can. It's a shame because he, in pretty much all of his appearances, pre-shittening of comics, Flagman was always tret legit. He could beat characters in fights. His ideas weren't even necessarily evil, but how he exhibited those ideas was. I always liked Flagman, and I was going to explain that, but I realised this is all stuff for when I look at his first appearance. There is another Axe of Vegans tie-in here, and there is another Captain America connection. One of the villains he fights is from the Serpent League of America. The other two are Ringman, who last appeared in Captain America where he was assassinated, and Ponytail Batman, who goes on to, and I think even before this, was already knocking around as a sometime Moon Man bad guy. Back to comics I have not read. Looks like we have some more Bushman. Bushman who was bitten by a radioactive president. With Moon Man, I have actually read a decent amount of Moon Man. It's like with Daredevil. I don't just decide I think these characters are not my favourites. I give them fair shots. As I said, I have read plenty of Moon Man. I really like that 2006 run, but that is about it. I think the character just doesn't really offer much of his own outside of that. These comics, they will probably be my second favourite Moon Man ones, but otherwise I find the character too generic. The things that make him special are really only emphasised in that 2006 run. Other runs have even steered away from that stuff incredibly harshly, such as the run that came after that. Totally did a U-turn and undid anything unique or exciting about Moon Man, at least in my opinion. Now this issue I know about because it has Silver Savile and Sandman, and I think this is either the last appearance of Sandman before he becomes an Avenger, or the first appearance of him after he left the Avengers. One of the two. It would be before. I just crunched the numbers in my head. We only had Axe of Vegans about 6 issues ago, so it'll be at the end of the year that Sandman joins the Avengers. Tom Palmplanner is doing it again. He's making another artist look as great as Sal Buscema. That is John Buscema's brother. This might be the one I am most interested in reading. I just want to see if it adds any more context or character arc to Sandman on the Avengers. That's another comic that I have convinced myself I like, even though it isn't very good. The Barry Amner Avengers run. That and SeaWorld Attacks. I reckon you could convince someone that this is maybe Sal Buscema art, or at least Ryan Paul art. I do doubt either of those artists would commit to a splash page that is this undynamic. Another Punisher team-up. What is this? The third one so far? And there is a fourth one at the end. I think it is the case that Chuck Dickens left this series to go and write Punisher instead. We have quite a few guest appearances of Spider-Man as well. I wonder if my videos are big in the Republic of Burundi. I actually think both the covers they chose for this omnibus aren't fantastic, and I would have chosen this one. Looks like we have an evil woman in a truly atrocious, overcomplicated costume. I think it's fair to say that I already like this character. It is 1991, so here is the mandatory guest appearance from Ghost Driver. I looked it up actually. Ghost Driver was selling like shy of $500,000 for 2 solid years. That is insane, isn't it? More insane is that Marvel abandoned this version of Ghost Driver because the 90s suck, and they have barely collected any of that run. I know it gets shit and aimless, but the first 2 years even, perfectly entertaining and enjoyable. It is not redefining the landscape of comics or even doing anything remotely inventive. But those first 20, 25 issues or whatever, they are better than anyone says they are. Chuck Dickens ends his run with issue 25, and we have this story here. It is written by Jim DeMatteis, and it is either profoundly rubbish or rubbishly profound. I like Jim DeMatteis, but he doesn't half get carried away with his philosophical prose. We have the return of Moon Man's pseudo Catwoman. She is a nun with a crossbow, and I bet she wouldn't jilt Moon Man at the altar. She wants to burn the city down. And you might know about this story because there is a short sequence in Affinity Gauntlets where Moon Man is shown reacting to the chaos being caused on Earth, and he sees a bunch of fires and thinks to himself about how it is similar to this story that he only just had. Here is what I think is the only scene in continuity that actually contradicts the eventual reveal that Moon Man's pilot, Frenchie, the character here, is gay. That is one I'm okay with, by the way. Frenchie being gay. I do think there is a tiny element of stereotype in it. Frenchie does seem a bit of a gay stereotype. But I think what they do with him being gay was good, and not at all preachy. It was that 2006 run. It really added a lot of character to Frenchie. And other than this one scene, which isn't definitive proof anyway, this is the only one that really stands out as contradictory to his homosexuality. I could spend the rest of this video praising that 2006 run. It was great. I don't own the single issue, so I can't even look at it and talk about all the things I loved about it. This, however, I do own these issues. We have a 2-parter with Hobgobbler, and I cannot really review them because they are part of a long, ongoing subplot with Hobgobbler and the origins of Demon Gobbler. Howie Mandel writes this, who wrote those 90s Ghost Drivers, and Spider-Man guest stars. Hello, Spider-Man. Not many guest stars in this. It's just Punisher and Spider-Man on repeat. And then we have one last Chuck Dickens issue here. And I need to remember to tell you that there is stuff missing from this omnibus. There was another Chuck Dickens Moon Man issue that was split up into 4 parts and shat out in Marvel Comics Presents for some reason. That isn't in here. The 4-part Marvel Comics Presents story, which was really just an issue they split up. It doesn't even work in the 8-page format. There's no big cliffhangers every 8 pages or anything to denote that there's a break between them. So yeah, that is missing, and it is a bit annoying that it's missing. And we end it with a story from Amazing Spider-Man, which teams Spider-Man up with Moon Man, Punisher, and the New Warriors to resolve a character from Chuck Dickens's run that I haven't even mentioned yet. I'm actually skipping to the bonuses because this pin-up is better for talking about this. It's the best shot of the character that I could find. Moon Man had a sidekick, Midnight, and I'm not sure of the exact order of events or the details, but Moon Man treated him like shit. Moon Man openly disdained him and thought that he was useless. But Midnight was like an eager beaver who was really keen to be Moon Man's sidekick. And well, what ends up happening is Midnight, he gets mutilated and experimented on. And now he is a bad guy that the heroes have to fight. It is just a big team-up story. It knows what it is. The art is by Martin Bagels. If I didn't use that pin-up at the back, it was this page I was going to have to use to showcase Midnight. We have the most compelling character in comics, Knife Splasher, being compelling. Midnight comes back in that 2006 run. The second story arc, he returns in that. This story is serviceable, nothing special. You've got your characters and you've got your plot. It's not completely disappointing. Not read this. Remove the credits and that would make a good cover. No, the back cover, which is the same image, just reversed. I like that better. Make that the cover. Hold on, here's a detail that I bet nobody else has ever thought about. It's not quite just reversed. Look at the crescent on his chest there, and then there. Nice little detail to consider there. I like that. I've not read the story though, but the writer of it wrote some of the worst Hulk stories ever. Bonuses, Marvel Age, promotional material, Fred M. Becker, yeah? Moon Knight and Dark Knight. Outside, and then we have Andy book profiles from the 89 update, including Bushman, who was bitten by a radioactive Bushman. They didn't do a profile for Frenchie. Weird thing about both these profiles is they point to an entry for Khonshu, which was never printed. I forgot to point that out when I did the omnibus. There's loads of little things where it points to profiles that they didn't do. Cover for the collection of that Spider-Man story. And there is that pin-up that was included in it, which I showed before. Cover art. Interior pencils. The end. I cannot really evaluate this. I've not read most of the contents. I am looking forward to reading most of the contents, however, so I will say it deserves the 7 thumbs up.